I would first like to open by acknowledging that the University of South Dakota is on Indigenous territory. The land where we're broadcasting from this afternoon's reading is the traditional territory of Dakota, Lakota, Yumonhan, Ponca, Otoe, and Iowa nations. This acknowledgement that we are occupying stolen land is but a small step toward honoring the truth and achieving healing and reconciliation. I would like to call all of us to please make a commitment as scholars, artists, and writers to actively work toward a better understanding of the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that make up the histories of the places that we occupy. Also, as we are coming together virtually during a time of grave climate crisis, I would like for us to make a commitment to learn how to become better stewards of the lands that we are all currently occupying. Finally, I would like to honor with gratitude both the land itself, as well as the Indigenous peoples, past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. If you are tuning in from elsewhere this afternoon, please feel free to share your acknowledgements of the lands you are currently occupying in the chat, if you wish. And now I am so delighted to welcome writer Jan Beatty to the University of South Dakota via Zoom today. Jan Beatty's 7th book, American Bastard, won the Red Hen Nonfiction Award and was published in 2021. A new chapbook, Skydog, is forthcoming from Lefty Blondie Press in December. The University of Pittsburgh Press published The Body Wars in fall 2020, and in the New York Times, poet Naomi Shihab Nye said, Jan Beatty's new poems in The Body Wars shimmer with luminous connection, travel a big life and grand map of encounters. Other books include Jackknife, New and Collected Poems, the 2018 Paterson Prize, which was named by Sandra Cisneros on LitHub as her favorite book of 2019. Jan Beatty's 4th book, The Switching Yard, was named by Library Journal as one of 30 new books that will help you rediscover poetry. And the Huffington Post has called Jan Beatty one of 10 advanced women poets for required reading. Beatty's work has been published in the New York Times, Sunday Magazine, Poetry, BuzzFeed, North American Review, and Best American Poetry. Other books include Red Sugar, Boneshaker, and Madwomen, which was winner of the Agnes Lynch Starrett Prize. For many years, Beatty worked as a waitress, an abortion counselor, and in maximum security prisons. She directs creative writing at Carlow University, where she runs the Madwomen in the Attic writing workshops. And on a more personal note, I want to tell you that Jan Beatty is a poet that I have admired so much for years. She is a profoundly beautiful writer, lyrical, nuanced, tender. She is also a truth teller. She writes it bloody. She writes the kinds of poetry that acts as an axe for the frozen sea within us. Her memoir, American Bastard, the official release date, which is tomorrow, I believe, is going to go off like a shotgun blast in the dark. Jan Beatty is a total badass. She is also a supremely kind friend, a transformative mentor, and an unstintingly generous literary community member. I'm so happy to see her today, and so happy that we get to share in her words and her wisdom. Please join me in welcoming Jan Beatty.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you very much, everybody. I can't see you yet, but I will. That was so very kind of you. I want to thank Leanne Rohrpar, Darlene Farabee, and the University of South Dakota Department of English for this generous invitation. And also a big thanks for Lee's inventive and amazing work, which I also have admired for many years. And hello to the students and other faculty. And to the students, you are so lucky to study with Lee and Rohrpar. I am studying with her by reading her, and I'm grateful for that. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to read some poems today and also some prose, and then hopefully talk about the craft of moving between genres. Okay, so I'm going to start with a poem from South Dakota Review, which thanks again to Leanne Rorpaw for making this amazing journal. This is called Psych Intake with Flames. The tests say I have a high IQ, but I have trouble walking around. There are pins in the air and so much pressure. The nurse says, have there been any changes? I've been getting stoned a lot, I say. I mean your address, phone, insurance, she says. I ask my shrink if something serious is wrong with me. I think I'm a horrible person. He says, your diagnosis is that you are superhuman. I tell him I drink Pedialyte and like the texture of baby food. I'm freaking out. I can't even talk and eat at the same time. For years, I've been wearing men's clothes, even though I don't like men. Eli Cattleman gentleman shirts and ropers from King's Saddlery in Wyoming. I think sometimes you just have to say, okay, even if you don't understand. Sometimes let the world of flames speak for itself. Let the radiant life shine. And I'm going to read some poems from my last book, The Body Wars. This is the cover, which is also sort of behind me on half hanging on the wall there. And sometimes I'm mistaken for a man, which is fine, but this poem begins at a Halloween party at Carlow University where I teach. It's called Crushing It. Halloween, the pizza delivery girl said, are you dressed like a trucker? No, I said, I'm supposed to be a Western woman writer. Oh, she said, I like it. Someone else thought I was Eddie Vedder, someone else, Tommy Morello from Rage Against the Machine. Maybe it was the ball cap flannel, but I was shooting for Pam Houston, dreaming of Wyoming and the Bighorns. Like when the cab driver in Dublin said, you look exactly like Anastasia. She's a singer, she's beautiful, except she has long blonde hair. Then I crossed the road and the guy at airport security said, this way, sir. Once at the makeup counter in Macy's, I asked for some skin cream. The skin specialist stood a foot from my face and said, I'm sorry, sir, we don't carry that line. Pam Houston, where are you now? I know you like cowboys, but the Bighorns call me daily. It's wide open that I need, where the road snakes and cattle move so slowly. They won't even call me ma'am, sir, or Neil Young. I'm here in Pittsburgh, crushing on you. So thinking of the connections between poetry and prose in my work, in all my books, I have poems about adoption. I was born in a place called Rosalia Asylum and Maternity Hospital in the Hill District of Pittsburgh. And that was what they used to call a home for unwed mothers, which is a dated expression. And the women would come and live at the asylum, have their babies there, and then leave. And then it functioned as a orphanage. And I lived in the orphanage for the first year of my life. This poem is about what they called the playroom in Rosalia, and it was, it's not the right name for it. If you saw a picture, you would know. There's this hanging bulb and a metal carousel with chipped paint and these little babies on it that look drugged out, sort of more like a horror movie. So this is called Double Cut. I was double cut. once in the womb with a hanger, once when I came out. In the asylum, the hanging bulb of the playground kingdom birthed the hunger in me. Children staring in cast-off tees, the paint-chipped metal carousel with struck stupid infants strapped in. The golden girl sits in her dirty diaper. She'll grow up a poet, loving suspension. You be the fat black crow. You be the driftwood. You be the poorest kid, dirty face. You be the crying one. You be the no name, strapped in and spinning. And this would be my last poem before I move to prose. And this is the title poem, The Body Wars. I walked into the woods bleeding. I left the town and mourned. Midnight in Alaska, still light, and I was alone, walking into the Sitka woods. It had been 1 year since I'd bled, longer since I fucked anyone. I was propelled forward into the thickness, into the needles and dirt of Sitka spruce, and stupidly, not even afraid of bear. My father, the person I clung to, needed to stay alive, had died 6 months before. He was the only one who made sense in my body, and his leaving was the impossible thing. I didn't know yet my own wars and how to name them. So during my father's sickness, when I stopped bleeding, the gynecologist said, well, it's stress. And did I know that in World War II, the women paratroopers stopped having periods? I was stunned by his directness, intensity, earnestness. You are in a war, he said. I didn't know what to do with that. And so I got on a boat to Alaska, the Alaska Marine Highway, slept on the deck until I froze. Then the shipman gave me a hanging bunk and slipped me food from the cafeteria. They said, you can sleep here, but watch out for the bow thrusters. I had no idea what they meant until the sound burst open and my berth swayed, and it was time to get off. It was a time of great changes. And days later, I'm wandering the woods at midnight, feeling lost and found in this northern place. And it was there I felt the blood start to move, felt a rising and falling and the stream down my leg. And I cried in the forest alone for my beautiful father, gone too soon, for myself and all my ignorance, not even knowing my own wars, the ones already fought or the many to still come. Okay, so I'm just going to move into reading from my memoir. It's called American Bastard, and I don't know if you can see that cover. It's me at 6 years old with a toy gun pointed at you. And, you know, my personality was formed early. And it's this memoir, you know, my life is not that interesting to have a memoir, but this is focused on adoption. And I was hoping to alter somehow the cultural story about adoption, which seems to be whitewashed and not true. So this is the dedication. This is for the lost ones who never knew where they came from. This is against the ones who pretended the loss never happened. I have a lot of voices in this memoir, and that's really part of the craft that I'm using. I think of them as my family of strangers. And these are quotes from writers, quotes from musicians. Music really helped me to survive. And chapter 1 starts with a quote from Wanda Coleman, the amazing writer who was Poet Laureate of LA for many years. This is Wanda Coleman. I stole it back because it was mine from the get-go. All shook up, a rumble mama burped, and there I was. Take these rhythms as evidence, my splendid rock and roll. So I'm going to start with the intro to the book. Again, this has an epigraph from a poet named Lynn McMahon. This is her. The tree was shaken from the inside out, the party greenly winding the interior stair, then abruptly stilled, as if drunkenness, resting there, summoned the suddenly weighted doubt. Let's talk about the tree, the shaking. After the shaking is done, after the child finds out she is not of this family, that there is no one she looks like, shares blood with, that her name is not her name, her family is a lie, her entire life is a lie, there is no more tree. Maybe you're saying, I felt that way. I always thought I was adopted. Please, let me stop you. You weren't. Talking about the mothered, motherless self, Betty Jean Lifton says, those who know their mothers cannot imagine what it is like to not know the woman who brought you into the world, what it is like to be forbidden by law to see her face, hear her voice, know her name. No one can imagine it because it is unimaginable. Maybe you're saying, I had the same thing. My mother died when I was 10. Please, let me stop you. I'm sorry for your loss, but this is not that. As tough as that was, you know who you are. You have a family, a face, a bloodline, a medical history. Maybe you're saying, at least your family wanted you. Please let me stop you. Maybe you missed the part when I said the adoptee's family is a lie. Her name is a lie. She has no grounding in the world. And besides, this chosen baby crap is the biggest lie to ever come down the pike. This is not about measuring sorrow, but this one's about you, how you can't seem to imagine, not even for a second, how it might be for someone who doesn't know who they are without boomeranging back to your own life. Try it. Try staying with the foreign idea that a baby is born, then sold to another person. Stay with it. There is the physical trauma of the broken bond. There is the erasure of the baby's entire history. There are these hands that have a different smell, a different DNA, reaching for the baby, calling it theirs. Stay with that for a while. No talking. I have a lot of very short sections here and some longer. So it's a lot of leaping sections. This one goes back to Rosalia Asylum. It's called After the Tearing and Rolling. After the tearing and rolling, you are an infant somewhere in a crib, in a room full of cribs. Someone is taking care of you. You don't know who. Who is the person who picks you up? Is it a woman? Is it a nun? There is no story in sight, no same loving face, blood of my blood face. The smells, the feel of the rolling and tearing are gone. Gone where? No face who has your face. No way of knowing who is who. What hands are these? Why are they different every time? There is no bonding taking place. The story is fractured here and forever after. Then strangers come to gaze at you, touch you, wonder about you. They decide to pluck you out of there and make you theirs. These strangers will take your name away and hide it. The government will cooperate. It will take months and months for this baby trade to be completed, a baby in exchange for money. Meanwhile, someone is feeding you. Is it a kind person? What do they smell like? You will never know these hands again. You will be taken to a strange place. People will start calling you the lucky one, the chosen baby. No one sees that your story is gone, that you are being handed off like a football. From now on, everyone will pretend that your first story never existed. They will act and want you to act as if you are one of them, their blood, their faces, their world. You know that to survive, you will have to do this. You will have to pass. But your new mother has dark hair and brown eyes. Your father has dark hair. Their noses are not like yours. Your white blonde hair shines sickly like the odd light in a bad painting. Later, you look at your cousins. They have beautiful long eyelashes, all of them the same. You value how others resemble others. You long for it. In first grade, you refuse to make a family tree. Your parents and teacher suggest you make one based on your new family. You refuse. So it took me, I searched for my birth mother for about 10 years. And when I found her, she didn't want to meet with me. And then she did. So this is, this section's a bit longer. This is the last section I'll read, and then talk about the craft of the book. And so when I met my birth mother, I was 32 years old. I didn't know my name until I was 32. And then back then I was a waitress, didn't have any money. And it was a long time ago because I was wearing dresses, which I don't wear anymore. And I had two dresses, a red one and a blue one. I decided to wear the red one to meet her. And when I got there, she had the blue dress on, which was pretty terrifying, really. So this is about that meeting. It's called I Wear the Red Dress. I wear the red dress. I drive downtown for the meeting, but I'm too afraid to go in. After 2 years, my birth mother has decided to meet with me after seeing an Oprah show on adoption. Why does Oprah wield more power than a flesh and blood daughter? I call my friend Paul, who works at the welfare office in the state office building, and he meets me at a bar in Market Square. It's morning, but we drink 2 shots of cheap whiskey each, and he walks me over to the investment building to meet my birth mother. I'm an alcoholic in recovery for approximately 27 years now. It seems crazy that I would go into that meeting after drinking, but at the same time, it seems that of course I would have a drink first. That was what I did. I meet the social worker who leads me to this closed room. She says, "You have 40 minutes." I walk in and my birth mother has on a blue cotton V-neck dress. It may seem strange to focus on this. At the time, I worked as a waitress, didn't have much money. I owned 2 dresses, a red one and a blue one. I decide to wear the red one to this meeting, and my birth mother is wearing the blue one. This is not about the merely instinctual. This is a book about what happened. It's not as though it's a common dress, a dark blue cotton jersey with a V-neck and a thin tan string belt. There it is on her body, the body I used to live in, apparently. Apparently, because all of this is shocking, more than strange. It's mind-bending, like the ground is sky and the sky is ground. I don't know how to describe it. I walk in, she jumps up and hugs me, and the hug is the real and unreal mixing somehow. It feels good, but I want to run. I want to get her off of me because who is she? And where has she been? We sit on basic chairs a few feet apart in this square room, in this office building, and start to try to speak about our lives. She is sobbing hysterically, deep, ongoing sobs and saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." It's a shocking and disturbing sight, this woman who I've never seen except at birth, sitting before me crying and crying. She has short, dyed blonde hair, light blue eyes. While she sobs, I am studying her to see if this is someone, finally, someone who I might look like. The resemblance is there, It's not overwhelming, but her coloring, her fair skin and bone structure seem to have some similarity to mine. Well, actually, mine to hers. You might think it cold and strange that I'm studying her in detail while she's crying, this woman who supposedly is my mother, but the body and blood is everything. Not knowing if there's another person out there who has your blood, who looks like you. That's everything to an adopted child. I was 32 years old when I met my birth mother, but at this first meeting, and still today, I'm the adopted child with a couple pieces of information. You might imagine, you might want to make it a magical, beautiful meeting between mother and daughter. If so, you would be projecting some cultural story onto this event. I didn't know this woman who I longed to meet and find. I had some questions. I had assembled huge walls of protection over the years as a way to stay alive. An adoptee needs to have a strategy from a young age, whether conscious or not, a way to manage this whole of abandonment, loss, and grief. It's too much for a child to handle. The loss of identity, the complete erasure of history, the floating in the world without a name, the original loss of being taken from the mother at birth, and then the adoptive parents pretending that they are your parents, the primary lifelong trauma. So here I am sitting across from her, the real and unreal colliding, holes in the air where something alive, something real might come through. 40 minutes. I feel bad for her, but I want her to stop crying. I think this might be the only time I see her. I need to know where I came from. I want the story. How did I get here? How did it happen? Why did she give me away? And the big question, who is my father? I want answers. I tell her I have the same dress at home. You're kidding, she says. No, I'm not. And I ask her where she bought her shoes. Baker's, she says. I tell her I have those same shoes at home. Brown low heels with a strap. Nice shoes. What is that? Does the same blood give us the same fashion sense? It's too strange to take in and still is, like a genetic code leading you into a dress store. She starts to talk and the questions she has are disturbing to me. Did you have a good life? I think, of course I didn't. You gave me away. What are you talking about? I'm just starting my life. What is a good life anyway? I'm suicidal. I struggle to stay alive. Would you call that good? I say, I guess. I mean, it's hard to say. She says, did you do well in school? What is she talking about? Why are we talking about this? I don't care how I did in school, and I'm 32 years old. Who cares about this? Obviously, she does. I say, yeah, I got a degree in social work. I'm a waitress now, though. She says, oh, that's wonderful. I'm thinking, what's wonderful about it? We're here in this jacked up room and you're my fucking mother and you're not going to get down to it. I don't want to talk about this shit with you. Do you have a boyfriend? She says. That's it. I'm the shell-shocked adoptee and want to like her and her to like me, but that's it. Yes, I have a boyfriend, but what does that have to do with anything? I say. She draws back, still crying. She says, I just want to know that you have a good life. I know, I say, but I need to know what happened. What happened? She says. Where I came from, who my father is, I say. She starts sobbing uncontrollably and grabs my arm hard. You have to promise me that you won't look for him, she says. He's not a nice man. More holes in the air, how to get to something alive, something real. This woman, my mother, who I've never met, grabbing me, asking me to promise something so large. It's too much. She hasn't given me any information. She kept hold of my arm, her voice getting louder. You have to promise me you won't look for him. I promise, I say. I know that I'm lying. I want her to stop. I don't want to lie, but I want her to stop. This is supposed to be about real. This is supposed to be about truth. The time is running down. I say to myself, I'll look for him and I'll find him. Thank you, she says. She keeps crying, but starts talking. You have to understand, it was a different time. I'm so ashamed. I say, there's no reason to be ashamed. She says being pregnant and unmarried was a terrible thing. It brought shame to the family. I had to hide from my whole pregnancy until it was time to have you. She's sobbing again. It was terrible. I didn't have any money. I knew I couldn't give you any kind of life. I'm sorry. I feel bad that she had to go through that. I feel angry that the stupid culture oppressed women like this and still does. But we are so far away from anything I need to know. She's rubbing her hands together, rubbing her hands over her forearms. I'm looking at her tan, her solid legs, hoping I'll look strong like her when I'm older. I say, I don't think there's anything wrong with having sex or getting pregnant. I'm not upset about that. I don't have any moral judgments about it, really. Can you just tell me how things happen about my father? I won't look for him, but can you tell me how you met? It all starts up again. She sobs harder, louder. She's shaking her head. He's not someone you want to know, she says. And then you can't go look for him. You can't. It is one crazy scene. The room so full of wild emotion. It feels full with pressure. Then I look up at this crying woman and try to understand that she is my mother. It's hard to even believe in the present moment. The real seems unreal. I had been searching for years and hoping and believing in this moment, and now finding the body seems like an out-of-body experience. Like we are saying sentences that fly past each other, like we are at such cross purposes, blood to blood, dressed in each other's clothes. I'm grateful in the swirling of that day to see her, to have a face, a body that is actual and real. That part is probably the most important. As an adoptee, I need that face, that blood connection, to not feel as alone in the world. That is everything, everything. The meeting is what it is. Who knows what it should be? We would meet 2 more times over the years with very different results. We hug again at the end of 40 minutes for a life. Shortly after, I stopped wearing dresses, cut my hair shorter and shorter, dye it blue. Okay, I want to talk for a few minutes about how I got from poetry to that memoir, which was not an easy journey. So I'd say I was trying to write that memoir my whole life, which sounds really dramatic, and it is. I mean, I was looking and looking for someone to write that story that I needed as an adoptee, and I was reading everything I could get my hands on about adoption, and usually throwing the book across the room because there was a lot of whitewashing going on, people making it nice and sweet and happy, and it's not always like that. I couldn't find anyone telling the truth about it as I knew. I've gone to conferences on adoption. So anyway, I wanted to write this book in the year 2000. So 20 years ago, I wrote a piece of this book and got it published in creative nonfiction. But I couldn't go further because I realized I didn't remember a lot about my childhood. So how would I write a memoir without knowing what happened? And I had no chronology in my head about things. When I tried to sit down and write about adoption, I would get unhinged emotionally because of all the trauma attached to it. So I had to go back to therapy. Well, I've been in therapy forever, but I had to work more in therapy on adoption. And so I had to get more mature as a person and then get more mature as a writer, because I had no idea how to handle this material as a writer. So in the structure of this memoir, there was a number of stages. The first really was journal writing. For many years, I had been doing free writing about adoption, just writing whatever I could think of, in journal after journal. So I kept all that, not thinking that it would be in a memoir, but just writing it. And some of that free writing became poems. In all of my books, I have 6 books of poems. There are poems about adoption, so that was helping me to write about it. And then I got to a point where I was going to try to write this book. And I went to a residency called Brush Creek Ranch in Wyoming. I think you can tell that Wyoming is really important to me, and heading west is really important to me. I also found out that my birth father was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba. He was a Canadian hockey player who won 3 Stanley Cups for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He also played for the Pittsburgh Hornets, the New York Rangers, the Boston Bruins. But before I knew that, I had been going west, and I had ridden the train across Canada like 3 times back and forth before I knew I was half Canadian. So, I mean, the body seems to know a lot more than we do here. One piece of information that became important was that when I was growing up, my aunt gave me this dictionary, and it was like about this thick. It was like about 12 inches thick. It was this massive dictionary with a leather cover with silver rivets. And I kept it in my clothes closet, and I would read it all the time and make notes on things. And I was reading encyclopedias when I was growing up. I was a weird little kid, and looking for definitions. For an adoptee, definitions mean a lot. Written things that can be proven mean a lot. So when I went to this residency in Wyoming, I took this book with me, not thinking that it would be part of anything. But this book was called Home Ground, A Guide to the American Landscape. It's a topographical dictionary edited by Barry Lopez and Deborah Gwartney. And I knew Barry Lopez and had a connection with him from studying with him in Sitka, Alaska, and then being in touch with him. So that was a good connection for me. When I started writing the memoir, I was having trouble. And so what I did was I took some parts of this dictionary and used them as grounding, like a metaphorical leaping structure, using them as epigraphs. So I'll give you an example of one of those, maybe to make more sense. But I think the first one I used was in the book was from a writer named Robert Michael Pyle. And it starts out, an infant stream is a small gathering watercourse at the very upper reaches of a watershed. And later it says, in heavy rains, the flow in embryonic rivulets grows from a trickle to a wash. So I think the phrases infant stream and embryonic rivulets caught my eye. And I, wrote that down. And then I, somehow that enabled me to leap into a description from my childhood. And I can't explain that. It's a metaphorical connection. But moving from that infant stream, the beginning of what I wrote was something that happened with my adopted sister. She was adopted from another place. And that was, the ivy green couch grows rabbit in the basement, with patterns too close together, the 1950s embossed leaves. The only witnesses when my sister tells me our adopted parents are not our friends, they are not to be trusted. So somehow I think the infant stream got me to the ivy green leaves in the couch. I don't know, but that's what kept happening with the book. And I'll just give you a couple other leaping things. And I kept doing this, not with a big plan. There was with no master plan here, trust me. I just kept writing and going back to the dictionary and writing. And there was no chronology in sight here, but this quote perhaps is more related directly to what I was writing about. And this was from Luis Alberto Urrea. And his quote is, "Huerfano is Spanish for orphan. In this case, a perfect description of the land form, a solitary spire or hill standing by erosion apart from kindred landscape features." So again, we have orphan and kindred, and everything seemed to be related to me when I was writing. And my response to this, and I guess it started almost to be a response, my response was more closely related. I think I started out saying, I was born an island in the sky, but I didn't know which sky. Why was I in the asylum? What were the rules here? So that was that connection. And lastly, I want to take your questions, but there was one, there were many different kinds of metaphorical leaps I was making with these definitions in this topographical dictionary. But one I remember making more deliberately. I wanted to write about the time I worked in prisons. I worked in Moundsville Penitentiary. And so I picked this quote from Terry Tempest Williams that was darker. And this is Terry Tempest Williams. "A particularly chaotic type of gaping river hole, a cauldron, is characterized by big, squirrely, boily water." So that, I could feel the chaos there. And when I started writing, I started with, "It was like a huge wall of water washing over me. One of my clients murdered another one of my clients in the old men's colony in the prison." So I was writing about a murder in the prison. So, and I just want to end by saying, over time, I had 9 versions of this manuscript, and I had some poems in the manuscript that I started to cut out as I developed the metaphorical connections with this dictionary. And, I had no idea if this would work at all, but that was the only way I felt like I could write it. And I'd be happy to talk about the struggles I had with publishing the book, but I think I'll stop here so we have time for questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan. That was an incredible reading, and I loved the discussion of your process. So, if everyone can bear with me for just a moment, I will move everyone into the Zoom webinar as panelists, and then we can shift over to our Q&A session. Okay, I think I've moved everyone over to panelist who wants to be a panelist. And if I missed you, just send me a note in chat and I will sort that out for you. But let's go ahead and open the floor to Q&A for Jan.
Yeah, please ask me anything. I'm open to questions, and it's good to see your faces.
Hi, my name is Amelia Harrington. I'm a poet and a PhD student in the English department here. I want to thank you for writing some of the difficult stories of childhood trauma. It's, in my opinion, absolutely necessary to write these stories if we're going to have any future containing adults capable of facing the world as it is. I'm attempting my first narrative of any kind. I don't generally move in that way along a linear sort of path, but I need to write the story of my mom's childhood in foster care and adoption, and then her entrance into motherhood at my age. I loved your example of writing into the memoir using encyclopedia entries as leaping off points or as grounding. I'm curious how you decided what to cut and how to arrange. And then, of course, I'm also fascinated by what you said was the struggle to publish or that process of getting other people to understand.
Yeah, thanks. I feel the same way. I mean, I feel really comfortable with poetry, and this is my first prose book. I mean, I had written essays, but I wasn't interested really in writing a chronological book. And even if I was, I couldn't anyway, because I didn't remember a lot of things. So once I got all of this stuff out, you know, as much as I thought I had, I just started really almost like putting a book of poetry together. I started moving things around and seeing what seemed to spark with something else. And there was some consideration. There was some consideration of if there was any chronology, maybe this should go before this, but there were certainly things in the book that that happened in the book out of order of time, and I was totally fine with that. And I had like 9 versions of this manuscript. I kept revising and revising. What I did was I showed it to like 3 different people who I trusted, people who knew me as a poet, and people who were really, you know, good writers. Just really to say at the beginning, because I couldn't get a sense of what I was doing. I couldn't get any kind of clear sense of what I was doing. I said, is this really like terrible? Is this good? Is this somewhere in between? I can't tell, you know, just tell me the truth. Tell me the brutal truth, you know? And people kept saying, well, it's unlike anything I've ever read. They kept saying that, and it's good. I said, well, please don't lie about anything here, because it was hard for me to believe that it was good, because it was so loaded with difficult information for me. And so that helped me. And then I contacted some people, some poets I knew who had published memoirs, and asked them if they would be people I knew very well, asked them if they would refer me to their editors. And so I got the book to a couple good editors, and it was rejected by everybody. And they all said the same thing. They said, this is harrowing, this is powerful. Can you make can you make it chronological? I said, no, I can't. No, I can't. And I don't want to. And then, and then I have this really good friend who is an editor in New York. And I went to New York and we talked, and he said, why don't you put yourself on a train and tell this story? And I said, because then I'd want to just kill myself because I hate that idea. It's like, no. And I couldn't, I wasn't willing. So then I talked with this Irish writer who's really great, Sinead Gleason is her name. And she said, have all these editors been men? And I said, yeah. And usually I'm very aware of that, but I was just trying to get to an editor and I wasn't even thinking. And she said, why don't you try some women? Maybe they'd be more open to this. And I said, okay. So I'm still discouraged. It'd been 4 years of sending and I'm like, this is not going to work. So then I went to see my astrologer. My astrologer said, how's the memoir going? I said, it's dead. It's not going to happen. And she said, it's right here. Look at your chart. It's right there. Send that thing out. And so I did. And that's really the only reason I sent it again. And I sent it to Red Hen, Kate Gale, and, Nikki Mustaki was the judge. So, women did pick it. And I'm not saying that only women will be open to non-chronological things, but that's the way it worked in this situation. And, it's less traditional, let's say that. And so that's how it worked. And I was, I really didn't think it was ever going to get published. So it was a long, unexpected journey there.
Prentice, you have a question.
Yeah, thanks. I was wondering, I sort of have a follow-up to Amelia's question. Thank you so much, by the way, Jan. And my name is Prentice. I'm a faculty member here in English. I was this is following Amelia's question a bit, but I was struck in your description of moving from the poems to the memoir, how it was sort of a description of that sort of leap from poems to metaphorical leaps to the final version. And I'm wondering how you would describe that process sort of more from within. Like, what did the poems enable psychologically or conceptually? And then why were they then no longer necessary in the final prose work?
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks. It's a good question. I'm so connected to poetry. I'm just really connected to poetry. And I think it was just safety. I just needed them. I needed them because I felt like I don't know what I'm doing. And I just needed a safety net. And I felt like I have these poems about adoption. Why can't I put them in? And then it became really clear that any of the editors did not want those poems in that book. And that pissed me off, really. I'm like, you just don't like poetry, and there's such a privileging in this culture of, prose over poetry that irritates me a lot. But, I have to be trying to be realistic without caving to some, traditional ways of doing things. And so, I was trying to be honest with myself and asking, what does the book need? What does the book really need? And the book didn't really need all those poems, I just wanted them in there. It's like when you write a poem that's where you overwrite it, or you overwrite the ending, and you have to cut it. You have to cut it, even though you like the ending. You have to cut it. It's like that. And so I cut almost all the poems, but there's a couple I left in. But this I hated doing. Like I changed the format of some of the poems, and I had to think about that a lot because I didn't want to. I don't believe poetry is sacred. I don't believe anything is sacred, but I still didn't want to fuck with the poems, and but anybody's poems. But I did lose some line breaks. I lost some line breaks and changed them, let them sit for a while and see what they did, see how they acted. So I was, as with everything we write, you have to serve what you're writing, not serve yourself. So that's what I was trying to do.
Justin has a question.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I got a quick question. So I'm also adopted. So I first of all, I just really was struck by what you were talking about, how these kinds of narratives of adoption that you're totally like no, this isn't the way it goes, because it's something that I've never been able to kind of articulate. So thank you for that. But one of the things I was kind of wondering about, do you think because poetry doesn't require kind of narrative the same way that, memoir or storytelling does, do you think that allows you to kind of get at those kinds of feelings, to break away from those narratives through poetry? I'm just curious if you think poetry was able to kind of help you to kind of come to those conclusions, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm glad that anything I wrote might be helpful to you as an adoptee, but I'll tell you what it is. I have great respect for nonfiction writers. I mean, like, it's painful to write what's real. I mean, all the way. There's some real stuff in my real, as in what really happened in my poems, but there's plenty in my poetry that's not true. And I love being able to lie and cheat and steal in my poems. And you can say anything, and you can leap into fantasy or fiction at any time. And I think that allows me to go into more difficult material in poetry. But saying that what really happened in nonfiction, man, wow, I found that much more painful. And I don't want to do that again. I don't see how nonfiction people do it. I mean, wow. I hate it. It felt like, it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like constraint. And I mean, now that it's a book, it feels, I don't know what it feels like yet. It's just coming out, but I feel much more free in poetry, and so I think that's why I feel like it might be easier for me to go places. But wow, I mean, who wants to talk about what really happened? I don't. It's really usually boring anyway, I don't know.
That's so interesting though, because I felt like there was such a strong, like in the memoir, this desire for what is real, what happened, right? And that sort of intention with the, like, as Amelia put in the chat, it's painful to write what's real. I mean, all the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted, was to talk about what was real. There's plenty that was left out. There's plenty that I'm sure I couldn't remember. There's plenty of extraneous stuff that wasn't mentioned, but I had to really work to extend the book, because I'm used to writing short. And when I first wrote the book, it was 100 pages, and they said that it has to be longer. I'm like, I love the compression of poetry. I like to make it, really tight and short. So it was really a challenge for me to extend, but it was a good challenge.
Skip, it looked like you had a question. I saw your hand.
I did. And this is going to be a kind of a detour, so I apologize in advance. I did notice, I couldn't help but notice the Epiphone Wildcat on the wall behind you. And I was just wondering, if you could comment you mentioned rock and roll, you mentioned music and its importance to you. And I was just wondering if you could discuss the kind of the relationship between your writing and music or rock and roll as you see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough that, when I was growing up, I used to like a little kid, I would carry around a transistor radio, and music was like saving my life almost as much as poetry, and it just, music became another place to live, in the songs. And I took guitar lessons for 5 years, and I, wasn't good. And, but I just, music is huge to me still. And that's my husband's guitar. It's not my guitar. But I'm going to have a book party this Saturday in live and in person in Pittsburgh, and we're going to have a band at the party. It's just something that's important, and I can get some of my poems come from listening to music. It's like a zone thing. You can listen to music and go into other areas and just find poems, and it's so important. I don't know, it's always been a key way for me to feel connected to what's alive. And live music is everything, so I'd go anywhere for live music, and spend a lot of money to get there. But are you a musician?
Yes, I am. So I do. So just out of curiosity, are there particular artists that you found, saved your life?
Saved my life?
Yeah. Which artists should we be listening to?
I'm not going to tell you. Whatever moves you, but I don't, and I've been having this discussion with my friends, that rock and roll in general can be very sexist, and I'm like, how can I listen to rock and roll if because of that? But I'm like, I can't like get rid of all rock and roll because of that either. So I'm like, how do you make sense of that? But we just went to see the Rolling Stones, and they were great, really great. I'd seen them a bunch of times. But any blues people, I like Townes Van Zandt a lot. Going back, Joni Mitchell for sure. But I don't know, there's so many, not one person. Muddy Waters, no, old blues guys. But yeah, I don't have like one list, but whoever comes along, but I love like new people. I love J.D. McPherson, and I like Chris Stapleton. I'm naming all guys. That's terrible. I like yeah, but anybody. Yeah. So.
Cheryl, it looks like you have a question. I think you're on mute.
There, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm Cheryl O'Donnell. I teach at the University of North Dakota, and am really interested, and I think, in fact, trying to help the renaissance of waitresses and long haul truck drivers and bikers and other folk. And I'm wondering, I am especially interested in the waitress stuff and the long haul truck driver stuff or anything like that. As you were a waitress, did you take the kind of fly on the wall position where you were observing your tables and talking with other waitresses sometimes? Or did your conversation and talk and trading jokes and stories and stuff last after the shifts? Or could you just talk a little bit about being a waitress? We got lots of different forms nowadays of that.
Yeah. Oh, I love waitresses, and I have some waitress poems, but I love waitressing. Although it wasn't, beautiful, I don't want to romanticize it. But I would not make the most money. I was not willing to, I wasn't real, very, nice,
Yeah.
I would just control the table, get the food, and that was it, and, that's what I was interested in, and do a good job. And I was fast, and that was it. But I wasn't interested in sucking up to anybody, but yeah, there was a lot of camaraderie in those situations. But back then I was drinking a lot and doing drugs. So my experience is not to be trusted. It was a big blur. And yeah, we'd go out every night and get screwed up, basically. So, but no, I wasn't observing. I was just surviving back then. So, but I had a lot of resentment, and I guess I still do, for people with money who act like jerks, and there's a lot of that going around. And a lot of class issues come right up when you're a waitress, and people really, whenever you get an Gold American Express card that says Dr. So-and-so, chances are you're not going to like that person, I mean, it's just, why would someone do that? So I have issues, but I hope you're writing about truckers and waitresses. I mean, that we need some trucker poems.
And I'm also, I really, in your descriptions of your conversations, in this case with your mother, the strength of those meetings, it shows up, so that you're very present, but you also make quite clear the questions that haven't been answered. And there's been many a time when a question was at the table and I just stood in the back and I couldn't stand it any longer. So I'd give the answer, and there went my tip. I'm not supposed to, I lost a lot of tip, but it was worth it. It was worth it, I think.
Yeah, I hope you're right about that.
Well, the truckers, my dream has always been to have some other kind of way of exchanging information and ideas, and the constant stuff that truckers listen to. If we had better radio shows, talking shows, all kinds of stuff, there wouldn't be a chance in hell for some of these other kind of fear-mongering types and so forth. So anyway, thank you very much for your commentary.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you a question, Jan. I love sort of thinking about your process in the memoir with the epigraphs. And I was wondering if maybe you would be willing to talk a little bit about instinct, because it almost felt like you were using the epigraphs as a kind of bibliomancy or a sort of divination. And I just love thinking about that. And would you talk a little bit about what kind of role instinct has played, or those elements of chance to kind of create those spaces in your work? And is that something that's changed for you over time as a writer?
Yeah. I mean, instinct and intuition, I think, is huge. And in writing, and for me, I really want to get there. I mean, that's what I depend on more than anything. Connections with, like with music, with what I'm reading, with people. I know that, for example, when I was working on my book, The Switching Yard, which was really about my birth father, I was in Canada. I was in Banff at a writer's residency, and I kept listening to the same song over and over for like days and days and days. And, not because I loved the song, I don't know, I just kept doing it. I don't know why, but I just kept doing it. And it was the Subdudes, I don't know why. And so if something seems right, I'll do it. And that's about as far as it goes. I mean, I think I can't explain, you can explain these things. What made me pick up that book when I went to Wyoming, that topographical dictionary, partially was because it was Barry Lopez, and I love him. And we had a really good connection when he came to Pittsburgh. One of his previous editors from Scribner's lived in Pittsburgh. And so I actually went to the movies with him one time in Pittsburgh. And, we hung out a little bit and I got to know him. And I don't know, I felt like there was some connection with him, so that I trusted that book. And that's, may sound strange, but so I took that book with me, and I just, didn't plan on using it, but it was there and I opened it. So, I mean, I believe in all that stuff. Who can explain how that happens? But then trusting it after it's down is another thing. And that's why I asked my friends to look at, a couple of writers to look at it, because they don't know what happened and they don't know about the instinct that went into it. And who knows what would reach them or what would make sense to them. One thing that I did do after all these people, these editors wanted something more chronological, I did go back and I reversed some sections. Like I put the section about meeting my birth mother more up front, because that's what a number of people said to do. So I said, okay, I'll do that. That's fine with me. I didn't do anything that I felt like was a mistake for me. But I was willing to move things around because I wasn't sure why they were there, why something was in a place that it was in. So I just went by instinct in the revision also. But I don't know how to explain that, except, I mean, except what I did was pointing to, an infant stream, that's some kind of clear relationship to what I'm writing about. Although beyond that, I just trust that leaping, and I work with my students on that too. I'm like, let's just, keep your pen on the paper, not on the computer, but keep your pen on the paper and just keep writing anything that comes to your head for 2 minutes. And if you can't think of the next word, just keep repeating the word until another word comes, even if it seems like the craziest word ever. And sometimes some crazy stuff comes out, and you have to wonder what it is, where's that coming from, and try to use that. I mean, it's telling you something from your body. I mean, I think all this stuff is in our bodies. Everything that's ever happened to us is stored in our body, which is really frightening. And if you call it up, it's going to come. And that's what's happening. And you call it up and you better be ready when you do. So that's what it is, asking your body for help and being ready to write it down. And then not censoring it when it comes out. That's the hard part, because everyone has that internal censor that says, this is terrible, I'm stupid, why did I think I was a writer in the first place? All that crap. So you just have to keep writing and writing and writing and let it come out. Even if you're changing subjects 5 times, just let it come out and see what is going on. And you see those metaphorical leaps in your own writing just from free writing. That'll tell you quite a bit,
That's awesome. Thank you. Sean, you have a question.
You said Sean, right? Yeah. Hi, Jan. I really enjoyed that, and I wonder about your process, and I may have missed this, so I'm sorry. I'm distracted with this old dog I've got here, but but anyway, it doesn't matter what he's doing. But I like what you're saying about taking those leaps and so on. And I wonder, as far as the narrative goes, so I guess I have a bunch of questions all jumbled together. You talk about things that you leave out and sort of the intuitive approach to this larger project. And I wonder, like, on a daily basis, how that would work for you. Like, did you sort of start getting together a bunch of discrete pieces that seemed like a whole book, or did you were you motivated for, say, 2 or 3 months each time you sat down, you were working on this larger work, or how does that work? And how do you know when you're finished? And the stuff that you left out, was it stuff that you meant to write or were thinking of writing, or was it stuff you wrote and you cut?
Okay. Well, that's a lot of questions.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. The intuitive stuff was stuff that I wrote in journals over years, for this memoir anyway. And that's where I get a lot of my poems too, but I just write, if something just is going to come out, or if I do a lot of my writing when I leave town. I leave town and go to residencies. I try to go every year, or else if I can't get in a residency, I leave town anyway and make my own and just write stuff down and just keep it. And lately what I've been doing, in the pandemic, is going back to really old journals, not for this project, but really old journals, and with stuff that I can't even recognize that I wrote, and trying to make something of that, because it doesn't even make sense to me anymore. Like, what is this? And now I'm going to turn it into something else. But so that becomes a different intuitive project. But I'm trying to remember your other questions. One was about what I left out. Some of what I left out of the memoir was just sections that they just, I don't know what else to say, except they weren't very interesting or didn't get to anywhere. So I just said, well, that's not that important. I mean, I knew certain sections I felt had to be in there, like meeting my birth mother, meeting my birth father, those big sections. But then I decided to there are some other sections in there, like finding my therapists, working in prisons. For example, my husband is not even in the book, which I think is good for him, lucky for him. He's been spared. But no, I mean, it's a very focused book on adoption. And so I was trying to keep it on adoption, but some other things sort of entered. And after just thinking about them, I thought they related, because, and the prison stuff, because, I always felt like a prisoner myself. And I was talking about the relationship between prisoners and adoptees, and, the lies in the prison system and that kind of stuff. And meeting my therapist was a huge accident, how that happened. And so thinking of intuitive things. So I don't know. I mean, those things stayed in the book, and what came out were the poems, because I think they were part of the bridge that got me to writing. And then I had to cut them loose. I think there was another question in there.
I don't remember. I'm sorry. That was poorly formed.
No,
But,
no.
I appreciated that the answer, and it's nice to have that kind of, it. Yeah. Anyways, I appreciated your answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions that anyone has for Jan this afternoon? Well, maybe we can all unmute and give Jan a round of applause. Thank you for her readings and her generous conversation and forward.
Thank you. Thanks all of you for hanging around. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for coming. It's been a great afternoon. Bye.
See you. Good luck with your writing.